G'day guys, this is Rob from Troutlore.com.au, Australia's fly tying specialist store. If you've seen the news in the last 24 hours, you'll pretty much be aware that we've got a bunch of storms coming throughout South Australia, Victoria and New South Wales in the next 24 hours. And following storms, you know what that means, flying ants. So today we're tying this little foam flying ant. Let's get started. We are coming in with a Goulburn steel 4214 dry fly hook in the size 14. Tie these in whatever size you prefer. We do get some pretty big flying ants. You can go right up to a 10 and the fish will still smash them. So you don't have to do them teeny tiny, but small ones always work as well. Then we are going to use some 8/0 Veevus thread. And starting here just behind the hook eye with leaving a little bit of space, we're just going to start our thread and making touching wraps. We'll work that down the hook shank until we get to the start of the bend. Yeah, we'll just trim off that excess, and we're coming in with our next material, which is some thin foam in the black color. Basically, we've taken our Stanley knife and cut a strip that's about 3 mils wide, making it 3 mils wide, 2 mils thick. And we're going to take that foam and with our scissors just trim the ends of it to create a little point. We want this to run down into the bend of the hook so that the tail end of it is just submerging into the water. So starting at the bend, we'll capture that little tag end with it just towards the near side of us. Because as we cinch it, it's going to want to pull the foam over the hook shank. As you can see, that's basically aligned it centrally. And then we're just going to start wrapping back down a little way into the bend of the hook itself, so that we get that foam butt essentially sticking down at the rear. Now to form the body itself, we're using some Upavon hollow dub. Here we're using the cinnamon colour, because what we find, a lot of these flying ants that we get around here in Victoria have that chocolatey brown or rusty brown colour to the body. So mixing that up with the black foam is going to give us a good coverage of a lot of the naturals that are on the water. So just a small amount of this dubbing, and we just want to form a nice thin noodle as always. Remember, like I say in just about every video, you use less dubbing, you can always add more, you can't take it away. So we just build up that thin noodle, and then from the point at about level with the hook point, we'll start wrapping backwards into that foam, and then we just want to build up a little ball. What we'll do is a little bit more dubbing in there just to fill that out. Again, the tiniest of pinches. You can see once we twist that onto the thread, it actually creates quite a bit of mass. So wrapping that over to fill that out, that creates a nice shape to it. And then we'll just end with our thread at the front of that ball, which is in line with the hook point. Next up, we're going to add some wings. For that, we are using some dry fly hackle. You can take some from the dry fly hackle packs we have here. We're going to use a Grizzly feather for this. It's a bit of a hack in this instance, something like that, but not everyone has those. So we're going to take a feather, nice long saddle feather, basically trim into it right at the point where the black ends and the white tip starts. Then cutting up into the feather, we're just going to put a gentle taper to create a fresh tip. With that, we can then trim out about an inch worth to tie in. There's our first wing. Now we'll repeat the process. Come in, trim it off at the start of that little white section, and then cutting down into the feather, we just go from either side and put a little bit of a taper in there to create a wingtip. Then come down about an inch, trim that off, and there's our next wing. So we're going to tie in our wings with the shiny side of the feather facing down so that they curve up slightly. Basically, before we start, we'll just shorten our thread slightly and then put a reverse spin in it, doing so by thumb and forefinger pushing our forefinger forward. Same goes if you're a left-handed tire, and then that way you'll see that the thread wants to jump backwards when we take tension off of it. So then a couple of loose wraps onto that feather. We can leave that sticking a fair way out. We're going to adjust the length in a second. And then a couple of loose wraps on the next feather, both of which we want to angle at about a 30-35 degree angle. And then we just pull them through gently until we get matching lengths and just extending out the rear of the fly. If we pull those front tags forward, we can change the angle with which those feathers sit at. Then pushing down to hold those feathers in place, we can apply a little more pressure. One wrap, two wraps around the hook shank locks that thread off. And that enables us to come back in and really bite down. Then we can trim out those tag ends and clean it all up. At this stage, we'll just wrap back slowly until we hit that point again where our thread is level with the hook point. Now for the legs of the ant, we're going to use another hackle. This time we're coming in with a black hackle feather, and as you've seen me do plenty of times in the past, I'm actually going to strip out the fibers from one side. So with the pad of my index finger and the nail from my thumb, I'll just pinch those fibers and pull down to strip them away from the feather. That exposes the central stem and allows us to wrap onto the stem and not have those feathers on the near side kicking out. And making it all somewhat of a mess. This will give you a nice neater wrap. You don't have to do it necessarily. If you want the fibers splayed out and giving you more of a scruffy look, you can do that. It will give you a different look overall. I prefer to do it this way. So we just trim out a few inches of that feather. Cleaning that up takes a little bit of time, but it's worth it for the result. At least I think so. Then we come up to the tip, clean off the top and peel out about 1/4 of an inch to clean that tip up. Now we want that bare stem to be wrapping onto the hook shank. So we need to turn this feather around and lay it down so that the stem is facing the shank. As we capture it, leave a little bit of bare shank exposed before the thread touches so that you're not wrapping into those fibres. We'll bring our thread forward to about halfway between the eye of the hook and the point. And we can start making wraps over the body, ensuring that first wrap is nicely aligned and straight. Once we get that in position, we can just keep doing touching wraps coming forward, which will give us a nice dense hackle. It's going to help with the flotation, although with the dubbing and the foam, there's no fear of this thing going under too easily. So one wrap behind the hackle, one in front, one behind, one in front. That will lock it off and you can trim out the excess. Just preen that back and put a couple of wraps in to clean up the end. And now we're going to bring the foam forward to create the rear part of the body. Turning our vise this way so you can see from the top, we'll just fan that feather out, pull the foam over the top, fold it across everything, and then with a little bit of pressure on the foam, pulling it forward, just take one wrap over the hook shank, follow that with another one, a little bit more pressure, pull back, and a couple of wraps on the shank itself to lock that into position. Now we are going to come back over the foam and start wrapping forward while stretching the foam forward with our other hand. Bringing that thread right up to the hook eye. We get one wrap around the hook eye at the front just to make sure we haven't gone too far. And then start wrapping back over that foam until we come right up hard against the hackle. At this point, we are now coming back to our dubbing and we're going to fill out the front section of the body. So a little more dubbing wax on the thread. Again, just the tiniest amount of dubbing, creating a nice thin noodle. And we'll start wrapping from the eye of the hook, working our way back into where that hackle is, then coming forward again, checking that noodle's nice and tight. And just keep wrapping back and forward. We just want a little more dubbing on there just to build up a bit of bulk in that front portion of the body. We'll also get some bulk out of the foam, but we want to see that cinnamon colour underneath. So again, just a bit more dubbing, doesn't take much. And then we'll end with our thread at the rear of that dubbing block. Pull our foam back and capture it with one loose thread wrap. Pull the foam tighter and a tighter thread wrap. Now we can come in, stretching that foam up, trim it nice and close, peel everything back and get a couple of good firm wraps around the dubbing and the foam itself. To finish this off, we'll just take our whip finisher and pop a couple of 2 or 3 turn whip finishers in there into that section of the body that we've created, the little gap between the head and the body. Cinch that out, trim the thread short, And there you have it, a foam and dubbing bodied ant with those splayed wings sticking out the back just as naturals do when they hit the water, and the underside showing that lovely cinnamon colour just like the ants we see here in Victoria. It's an ideal fly to have in your fly box in the coming weeks as we see these spring and summer storms rolling through and the ants which are definitely hitting the wing. As usual, all the materials for this fly are down there listed in the description. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, follow the channel. We have more content coming each and every week. Leave us a comment and let you know what you think of this. And as always, happy tying.